Okay, hey there, everybody. Andrew King here, editor-in-chief of Canadian Musician Magazine. Thank you very much for joining us for Boost Your Vocal Performance and Career, the latest from our series of free music industry webinars presented by Canadian Musician and NWC Webinar. Joining us today, Micah Barnes, singer, songwriter, vocal and performance coach. Yeah, definitely one of the most recognizable and celebrated voices in the Canadian music industry. We'll introduce Micah in just a moment. But yeah, he travels between Toronto, New York, and Los Angeles very regularly, working with clients. He also does private sessions online. He's the man behind the Singers Playground series of performance workshops. So for more information about Micah, especially on how you might be able to take advantage of some of the programming and resources that he and Singers Playground offer, you can go to singersplayground.com. Again, my name is Andrew. It's a pleasure having you join us. As we mentioned briefly, just by registering and logging in for the session this evening, you've been entered to win a Biodynamic Box USB studio microphone. Now, to call this brand new, I don't even know that it's on store shelves yet. So you may be one of the first people in the country to land this thing. We'll be giving it away to one lucky winner after the session ends. And again, all you have to do is log in and be present for the session after registering, and you're automatically in there. So best of luck to everybody. And here we go. Let's jump into it. First off, Micah, pleasure having you join us, and fill us in on, I guess, what's been keeping you busy of late.
You know, it's weird. You should never try to make a record at the same time as like creating your next stage concert show. That's like a dumb idea. Don't do two things at once that are that big. That's what I've been doing. And then, and also keeping up with my regular coaching, which, it combines performance coaching, sometimes career strategy sessions. And, I'm getting ready to do a couple of workshops at the Canadian Music Week this year, one of which is about forming your own team, how to team build when you're an indie artist, and the other one, a voice workshop. So I'm sort of, busy on all fronts and just digging what I get to do.
Right on. I'm glad you mentioned that, because just to give you an idea, our idea with the session this evening is to cast a nice wide net and touch on a number of topics, give you a few valuable, useful pointers, things you can put into action right away. But also just know that, a lot of these things we're touching on could be entire sessions in and of themselves. So again, for that, if you want to know more about any of these topics, in addition to all the resources available online, singersplayground.com is where you can tap Micah's help. So yeah, and I guess that brings us beautifully into the very first point here. First, we're going to talk some vocal care basics, but I guess this is an important point to kind of cover us through the rest of the session. But in a lot of these cases, you may not think that you're necessarily ready for a vocal coach, but it's not just, professional performing singers that are going. Yeah, can you weigh in a bit on our audience here and just what they should know about when it might be time to enlist the help of a vocal coach, and when it is time, how they go about finding a successful partnership?
Oh, I'd be happy to talk about that, Andrew. Like the main thing, well, I will tell you that there's no coach on the planet who hasn't experienced singer, franticness. Like somebody who's they've already booked the studio session and they're in rehearsal on the song, and suddenly they realize there's 3 notes that they can't sing, and so they call the vocal coach. And it's literally the worst time to go and work with a coach. I'm not saying that's not, of course you're going to do it, but what you really want to do is you want to be working with a coach when you're not busy with live shows and you're not busy with an album or recording. You want to be working with a coach when you have the time to practice and learn new technique, when you've got space in your schedule so you're not going back to your old technique, learning something new during the day with your coach and then going to sing the old way at night. And it's very hard to get into singers' minds how important having a clear stretch of time is when you're working with a coach. But that's me putting my oar in the water one more time. Call your coach early. And good question about finding the coach that's right for you. How do you know, right? And a lot of people will coach shop before they settle on one that they like. That can be expensive. One of the things I always recommend is If you like the way a coach looks online, and you can get a conversation with them either through email or on the phone to talk about their work and what it is you're looking to do. If it seems like it's a good fit, there's nothing wrong with asking them if you could chat with one of their clients. They'll probably give you the client that's the most happy, but that's not a bad thing. Talking to a client can sometimes be very illuminating. And then you'll get a bit of perspective from somebody who's worked with the coach. Also, some coaches are willing to offer a nice price to do a bit of an interview or a look-see where you just kind of sing a bit. They talk to you about what they might do with you. And yeah, it's their chance to sell you what they're going to do, but it's also your chance to ask a million questions. And even if you think you don't know the right questions to ask, go with your gut. Feel them out. Is this someone you want to take a risk in front of? Do you think they'll be supportive? And do they know what they're doing? The low price coaches tend to be, they're lower price for a reason. And the higher price ones are usually a higher price for a reason. I'll just say that as a simple guide. It's like cars. And make sure you take her for a drive before you buy her.
Beauty. Yeah, so I guess jumping into some of the practical tips, and we're starting off with, I think it's fair to say, a very basic one. Water and rest are key, although give us an idea, about how often and frequently we should be hydrating, maybe any tips there. And on the flip side, like rest, I think a lot of people, myself included, think sleep, but that's not necessarily the case when you're talking about, both your body in general, but then also your voice. So can you elaborate a bit on these fairly straightforward points?
Oh, with pleasure, Andrew. Yeah. Well, I'll deal with the water first. We are all not drinking enough water, apparently. I've been hearing it from coaches my whole life while I've been singing. Drink, at least a liter a day. And, some people, and I swear by this, when they have, excuse my fire engine out there, some people swear by this, and I've tried it, and it really works for me. If you do 3 liters a day when you're leading up to the studio or an important live show, watch your cords lubricated, being able to create sound that you didn't think you were capable of, and you get less tired vocally because of all that lubrication. So regularly we should be doing at least a liter a day. Coming up to a show, 3 liters, and I always buy them by the liter. That way I can measure easily. It's easier to cart around the liter bottles than trying to fill up a glass, In terms of rest, nothing beats a really great sleep. In fact, I don't think you can have a great show when you're tired. Adrenaline will do a lot, but it won't replace that sheer raw energy that we all need to put on a great show. So it's hard to rest when you're coming up to something important. I sort of encourage my clients and anyone that is within earshot to take the day off when it's a show day. Treat yourself like a queen or a king. Have a bubble bath, read a magazine, chill out, call your mom. Do the things that you don't have a chance to do on a normal work day. And really, let the songs, take a look at your material and really prep, but rest more than anything. Like, make sure that you feel relaxed and calm and peaceful, because there's going to be all kinds of million last minute things that you're going to have to deal with, and having a calm attitude is very helpful, not only to ourselves as artists, but those who have to deal with us.
Right on. And then, this last one leads us in beautifully to the next slide. Micah's advice here is always warm up ahead of, I guess, what we can call using your instrument, whether that's for some of the things we've talked about, like a major performance or a recording session. But even if you're practicing or rehearsing for one of those types of events, or even if you're just kicking around some writing ideas and you might be humming or belting out some melodies while you're trying to figure out arrangements, vocal phrasing and whatnot. The tip is, if you're using your voice in this setting, make sure that it's gotten a bit of a workout and is ready to go. So I guess on that, we can jump into, what makes for a good warm-up and or a part of your practice regimen. Warm up every day, not just show day. And can you walk us through like what you suggest for people just to get their instrument into the game, I guess?
Yeah, with pleasure, Andrew. We've got the key elements written there of breath, placement, and physical tension. It's an interesting thing. We don't really think about our breath all that much. We're just trying to sing the song well. And so we leave our breath alone and we don't pay attention to it. If you work your breathing, and in my case, I always coach clients to work very, very far down in their abdomen, down in their belly. So they're imagining that they're filling a balloon at the bottom of their torso. That way, there's less muscular push and pull and a lot more air that you're capable of gathering and utilizing. So if you're practicing your breath and you're working your breath separate from the song, separate from the material that you're trying to accomplish, but really just on its own. And, I'm always happy to work with people to give them breathing exercises. That, to me, the breath sets up, it's the fundamental element that allows everything else to happen. When we're out of breath, it just means that we haven't figured out our breathing in a piece of music. If we're finding that we are, out of tune, some of the times that's just simply our breathing. So I really like to work breath separate from songs, and then sometimes I'll work the breath into a song and just work on the breathing, and that's all. Seems like an odd thing to do, but once you start doing it, you'll notice that your shows and your studio sessions get so much more powerful. Your voice really shows up when the breath supports it.
Right on.
Yeah, and placement is the second one. So, placement is a funny thing. There's a million ways to think about placement, just as there's a million ways to think about breath. So when I say that that's the second of the key elements, what I mean by that is whatever your understanding of placement is, you want to be working that on a daily basis, creating an ease of a working method that allows you to get the most out of your reverberation of your voice in your skull. That's what placement's all about. You want to create more vibration in the hard surfaces of your skull, and that kind of placement will always allow you to last the longest and sing with the most power. So that skull is where you want to be working your placement. Every coach has different approaches to that, at my own, but what they really are all about is the air hitting the hard surface of the skull. And so that's really how we make sound. It's like ringing a bell. And so the placement is just where is that going to emanate from in your skull. And that's where you get a lot of really great detail working with a coach. The third key element was physical tension, which, oh my God, we could spend all day talking about the ways that the singers, including myself, man, are ignoring our physical tension and singing through it, right? Just like, I'm going to give her. And, I'm exhausted and I've got a high note and the band's too loud, or this song is not in my range, but I'm going to make it happen. And of course, physical tension is the natural result of pushing. Usually we notice it in our throat, and we notice that can start to curtail our range and certainly our tone and our flexibility. But physical tension shows up other places too. If you're breathing high in your chest, you'll notice that your shoulders get tight. If you're breathing with a very quick breath, but using your muscles in a way that's sort of, how can I say this, like getting the air in really fast, sometimes it's going to be the muscles in your abdomen that are going to be tight. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want. You want to be filling a balloon and releasing that balloon easy with no tension on the way out, so that the air hits the hard surface of your skull without you pushing and squeezing on it. So physical tension starts to become really apparent when we're looking at new material that we don't know well and we're using our old tricks. All our old physical tension shows up. You try to sing a new song in rehearsal and you're like, man, I can't get these notes. Well, that's usually because our physical tension is holding us back. I like to work physically. I like to see people working physically, and I believe in a warm-up that includes physically relaxing all the places in our body where we get tight. Shoulders, neck, throat, chest, and the back of the neck is one of the worst places for that. And For anybody who's wants to check out some of my thoughts around what a warm up could look like that would get you over physical tension, there are a series of videos up at singersplayground.com that you can see me sort of demonstrating with my buddy Rue and putting him through the paces of what could be your warm up. Listen, I believe in this warm up every day thing, that not just on a show day as per the notes here.
Mm.
When I say developing your practice regime, what I mean is don't practice the day of the show. That's too late. By that point, you need your body already responding to a series of exercises that is giving you the most breath, the most access to your placement, and the most release of your physical tension. So you want to work every day. You can't be thinking, oh, I got a show tomorrow, I'll just do a little warm up tomorrow. But like today, I'm all tight and I'm tense and I'm singing through my songs. Nah, you need to hit stage or hit the studio with a very long track record of creating the best technique and the most open and relaxed singing possible. Okay. So I believe in warming up every day, man. That's I swear by it.
Oh, that's great info. And we're hearing some great feedback here and actually getting some super questions lined up, which we'll get to very, very shortly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I guess I should have mentioned, like, we're speaking more about some, I guess, technical concepts in the first half. We'll go to questions in a moment, and I'll put some of these in front of you, especially ones that pertain to things that we've talked about already that are more technical based. And then afterwards, we'll be getting into things more performance-based and, just general, more macro kind of career level concepts. And again, the idea is just to give you a bit of a sampling of a bunch of different topics, still give you some info that you can put to work right away, and then you can feel free to follow up on any of this. So here we are, pre-performance preparation. And why don't we say, whether it is a studio session or a performance, but, something where you are singing for people.
Right.
Can you walk us through this a bit? And I guess the first one's pretty straightforward, knowing your material inside and out, but maybe you can speak to the importance of that and take it away.
Yeah, I faked it for years, thinking I was memorizing my words, and I was sort of, I could get on stage and kind of, as long as I knew my words, I felt like I knew my material. And, so many of us hit stage and forget the lyrics, or we're terrified that we're gonna forget the lyrics. But instead of like digging in and really like figuring out how to prepare properly, we just sort of wing it and fake it and just bear with the stress and the anxiety, which, it does make singers a little, sometimes we are the more dramatic personality in the band. I can't argue that. And a lot of it is we're just scared. We're scared we're going to forget the song when we're up there. So knowing our material inside and out, for me, it's really about the emotional life of the song and making sure that either the client that I'm working with or myself, when we hit that song, we've already done the work where we've personalized it. We've allowed the lyric to really live in our heart, and potentially creating something like a kind of a emotional roadmap. So we really know kind of, when I hit this chorus, this is where I'm really angry, and like, right? Like, okay, so if you plot that through for yourself, then if you forget the words, you'll still be able to make them up because you'll know where you are in your emotional story. And that's one of the benefits of knowing the material inside and out. One of the other benefits is you create a much deeper relationship with the audience when you're really communicating. And you can really only communicate if you know what you're saying and like who you might be talking to in the song. Like, I really have to say, there is nothing like writing out your lyric, putting it on the paper, write it out longhand, not on the computer, and looking at those words as you write them out, they'll land deeper with you. And I also like to work with my clients to get them to speak the lyrics using the balloon breathing and really saying the words out loud before they ever go and sing it. That way they have a really clear understanding of what they're trying to communicate. And it's really important to know who in your own life you might be singing this song to, and why. Why are you singing this song? Yeah, if you're in a cover band and you're singing a cover tune and Shania Twain wrote a tune you have to sing, you have to personalize it and make it yours. You can't simply recreate what the record sounds like and still expect to communicate at a profound level to your audience. And we're always looking to create the biggest possible communication. Well, that's kind of that's what I mean by knowing our material. Take it apart, really know it well.
Oh, right on.
And it's in our notes we talk about warming up before arriving at the venue. Well, yeah, because we all know, you get to the venue, right? Good luck trying to find a moment to warm up. It's not going to happen. It's like, the band got your attention, the sound man needs you. If you're the singer in your own act where you are solo and you don't have bandmates, well, then all the onus is on you to handle the sound check and take care of the front of house and all the details at the venue. And we don't have time to warm up in the middle of all that. So I'm always about doing your warm up at home. And, if you get to the venue and it's been a long time since you warmed up, you can always do a quickie in the bathroom if there is no backstage. And, there's nothing wrong with making sure that your show is going to be as open and free vocally as possible. And it says here on the list of our pre-performance preparation that water and rest is key. Well, seriously, if you can get a nap on a show day, it's hard to do, but if you can do it, then I guarantee you're going to have a better show. And keep the water up. Like I said, 3 liters a day for 3 days before your big show. You will notice a huge difference. I noticed it myself, and I was guilty as charged. I never used to drink water, and man, now that I do, and it's just been fantastic. I just feel like my voice goes on forever.
Mm-hmm. First-hand testimonial.
Yeah.
So the last point here before we go to questions, and it's a great one to kind of bridge us into talking about performance, because we are going to talk about things like stage fright, but here, and something to keep in mind ahead of your performance, which is why we've kept it on this half. But as Micah says, performance is a head game, and I'm really curious about what you mean by removing your inner perfectionist.
Right. Well, it's funny. Most of us are just so judgmental of ourselves, especially when we're singing. And honestly, it is the worst thing for our singing. Oh, did you hear how you made that note not quite perfect. It wasn't where it needed to be. And the mean voice in our head that see, you suck. See, you suck. And that is absolutely useless. In fact, it's damaging. There's no way you can go sing if you're worrying about how you sound, I try really hard to not listen to myself when I'm on stage. It's hard. I want to sound good just as much as the next singer, but if I'm focusing on that, then I'm not focusing on communicating, right? And performance is a head game. And if your head is all busy worrying about how you sound, I guarantee that you will not be communicating. So removing the inner perfectionist is a really hard process. It kind of starts with recognizing it, and then you're going to drive yourself crazy because then everything you do all day long, you'll recognize the voice in your head that's judging you and saying you're bad. Fantastic. It's just what we need, right? But that is, in fact, the voice that is your worst enemy when you're on stage or in the studio. So my advice is to write it down. Actually write it on the page and go, okay, what am I saying to myself? You will be surprised with how mean you are. And at some point, right? So at some point you might want to name your inner critic, whatever you want to call him or her. Dear Charlotte, I would prefer that we would have this conversation when I'm done the concert. We will meet at home, and you can tell me everything I did wrong at that time. And let Charlotte have her day, but don't let her have her day while you're in performance. And there's no easy way to get rid of your inner perfectionist, but noticing it is a great start. The second thing, writing it down. Third thing, actually filling your head with the other stuff, right? Which is the whole, this isn't the most important show on the planet. No one's going to die if you sing that A flat wrong. It's not, no one's sitting here in judgment of you. So why don't you just relax and have a good time with communicating this material to your audience? So, dialing back the stakes, making it a low pressure situation is what I would recommend. And that's tricky. It's hard to do. You have to really talk to yourself. Not every show is the Super Bowl halftime. Some of them are just the local coffee house, and it's okay if you screw up. Giving yourself permission to screw up, and know that that's just part of learning and growing. And your perfectionist doesn't want to hear that. It wants you perfect now and beats you up if you're not. Not useful. So going with the idea that your perfectionist is going to be fired and you're going to bring in a new CEO, sort of like some kind of hippie version of yourself that it eats organic and just takes, everything's real chill and not stressed out and doesn't even isn't part of the grid, off the grid. You want someone who's so relaxed they don't even have a cell phone. That should be your inner critic.
Oh, beauty. This is great. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and for submitting really great array of questions. So yeah, a few to throw at you here, Micah, that are, I suppose, more like physical. Kicking us off, the first question is about going from your head to your chest voice. Any secrets for doing this successfully and with breath not breaking?
Yeah, so breath is definitely a big part of creating sort of a one voice approach, so that there's no break or we don't hear you traveling through your bridge. Mm-hmm. The main thing, though, is placement. If you place your sound far forward in your mask, you will find that there's less tension involved in switching gears. The further forward you place your sound, the easier it will travel through the different ranges. And it's something that you'll want to experiment with on your own, but you might take it to a coach and see if they can help you with it. It's one of the things that I love coaching the most, because of course, it's one of those bugaboos. Everyone's unhappy when they hear that break in their own voice. Meanwhile, there's a bunch of singing careers that have been made because of us hearing you flip into falsetto. It can be a really beautiful, tasty thing. But if you want it smooth, it's about placement and then supporting with breath, but no tension in either. So that's the secret. And, that's my tip.
Awesome. When you're touring, or I suppose we could also say just have a busy performance schedule, sequential days, any tips on what a singer can do to avoid vocal fatigue?
Well, yeah, certainly the rest in the water is a really big thing. Mm-hmm. But there's a kind of I don't know how to say this. Staying relaxed on tour, like not stressing, is really, really important, because the anxiety and stress levels are really high generally on tour. Like, we don't know where we're going to sleep. We don't know if the food's going to be any good. We don't know if the venue is going to be ready for us when we arrive. It's a lot of questions, and whether you're in the van, whether you're like taking the public transit, or whether you're in a plane getting to your gig, it's all about, like, am I going to get there on time? So there's a lot of anxiety. So my thing about being relaxed and staying chill on the road, that actually helps the singing voice, because our voice is part of our body, and if our body is tight and tense and anxiety ridden, of course it shows up in our voice. We get tight and tense. So that's number one. Getting a great night's sleep is hard sometimes on the road, but I would honestly say a great sleep is being number one. When I was with the Nylons, we had the luxury of flying and then hotels, but of course we had to get up at 6 a.m. to get to the next city. So sometimes sleep was hard to get. And in that regard, learning how to power nap, that really gets us through. And making sure you're warmed up. Warm up, warm up, warm up. Oh, did I say warm up? Warm up. That's how you do it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks a ton. This is great. Yeah, the next one here, again, these are kind of a similar vein. But what about a good habit for after performing, especially, it's coming from Lori, especially if you're an aggressive performer with a big voice and style?
Wow, that's such a great question. Yeah, so people don't talk about the warm down. It's especially if you sing big. You definitely want to do what I will describe as a gentle warm down. So sometimes it's the brrr, like blowing or humming and really manipulating your lips. Those two things, like I find those really work for me to kind of warm me down. And essentially what you're trying to do is you're telling your poor vocal cords, yes, I know I've really, really used you. And don't worry, it's over now, and I love you. And I won't do that again for maybe 24 hours. And your body gets used to it. It goes, oh, okay, good. So now my muscles can release. Now my muscles can relax. And that's what you want. You want to be releasing the muscles that have been engaged and kind of disengage them. And that's what the brrr and the humming will do.
Awesome. And then last one, we'll get back into this. But any suggestions on self-care if you've got a performance coming up and you're under the weather, in addition to what we've already talked about?
Yeah, well, let's see. Self-care when you're under the weather. It's a tricky thing because, if you take pills and stuff, you tend to dry out your voice and your throat. But like say if I know I've got a flu or a cold coming on, besides rest and water, water will flush the germs and the bacteria. Rest will help your body cope and give you the most energy. The third thing, drugs. I use Buckley's. They have a fantastic pill form. Of course, they also do the liquid that's famous for tasting so badly and feels like it's burning your throat. Well, the Buckley's pills, liquid gel and pill form, they sort of they get rid of any head stuffiness, sinus, or headachy feelings that I might have, and they don't dry me out too much. So it depends on your body chemistry. In my case, that's sort of really what I found to work the best, but you kind of have to play around with it. Unfortunately, it's not an exact science, but I do use that to clear up a cold or a flu. And I have done a lot of shows on Buckley's. They actually should be underwriting this entire, webinar. We should get Buckley's to pay us for this.
The first corporate sponsor. What a great one.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. There's a few more in the queue here, and as we mentioned, we'll have a longer, more general Q&A session at the end. So, yeah, thanks for your patience. Thanks for sticking with us. This is awesome. So here we go. Owning the stage. This is where we're going to jump into the more performance aspect versus the technical vocal stuff. And remember, Micah presented workshops and done his share of coaching on both sides of that coin. So yeah, you wrote a column for us, I think it was a couple of years back, but about overcoming stage fright. It's one of the best that we've had in a while. Jump into it if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Andrew. Yeah, overcoming stage fright. It is the hardest thing, right? Like we all have it. I have it. I don't know anybody who doesn't have it. Identifying the underlying cause, it's usually a perfectionism that is making us freaked out because we don't have control on stage. And that's the damn truth of the situation. The monitors might not work, the piano player might forget the key, the audience might talk through our set, no one might show up for our show. There's a million things that we worry about. And usually stage fright is extreme worry. It's worry about what could go wrong and that we're out of control and that we can't control the situation. So, identifying the underlying cause usually means getting honest about what we're scared about. And that's a very, very, that's like a process that's very personal. I love working with singers on it because it's been a major problem for me. When I started, I had like sciatica acting up, and I'd get a cold every time I had to do a show. I was so freaked out. And it's because I didn't think I was any good. I mean, I wanted to do it, but I wasn't sure that I was really equipped to do it. And, you know, I think we all feel that in life. It's just that stage is the most extreme version. So, yeah. So in terms of getting to this point where you can own that stage comfortably, of course, warming up will help you. And I say in your warm up, make sure that you're really imagining yourself on that stage, see yourself doing it. That visualization can really, really help. But more than anything, accepting that you will be out of control. You will not have control. So how do you make friends with the fact that it's not about having control? It's actually about the liberation of not knowing what's going to happen next. Those are the performers that we love, the ones that are willing to kind of, as they say, go for it and live in the moment and not pre-think every move and not, you know, have it all choreographed, but actually who kind of are willing to take a risk. And that's what getting on stage is about. It is a risk. You have to be willing to stand up in front of people and declare who you are. And if that isn't scary, I don't know what else is. You know? So yeah, so it's about knowing what it is that is freaking you out. And usually it's you. It's usually that we want to maintain control so we look good. Well, let's get rid of that ego and let's just get up there and start communicating. That's what the job description actually is.
Oh my God. Yeah, another thing that you've written on in the past, for those joining us for the live session, again, there's a number of handouts here, some of the more recent vocal columns that Micah's contributed to Canadian Musician. And I suppose, yeah, if you're watching the recording, you can get your hands on our back issue, CanadianMusician.com is the home base. But practicing your banter, your patter, your talking in between songs, to put it as bluntly as possible. Yeah, you've got some great tips here as far as just being prepared and giving people an idea sort of what audiences expect. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So, you know, we're talking about practicing your banter, right?
Yes.
So why is it that we will do everything? We'll practice the songs, we'll figure out what we're going to wear, we'll like make sure that our, you know, the best people that we want to sing to are in the front row, but we won't like actually figure out what we're going to say. I don't quite get why we leave that part off the list, because it's literally the most important part of a performance is what happens when we're not singing.
Interesting.
That's when people get to know us. Like, that's, you know, wow, like, who are you? Why would I come out and hear you again? Well, I like your songs, but, you know, what do you represent to me? It's always the unconscious factor for an audience is, do I like this person? Do I want to know them? Or could they be kind of like my avatar? Is this person my hero? Do they represent me? You know? So getting to know us is what the audience is actually seeking. They may not know that. And so our job is, well, we got to, I think, do more preparation. First of all, when I say know what you want to touch on, I mean, like, you know, have a couple of stories figured out about the song. You know, like where you wrote it, what inspired you, what it was like when you brought it to the band, or, you know, give us a little insight into what your experience as a human being is. I do feel with banter that if you have an important show coming up, like a showcase, you definitely want to practice your banter in a series of warm-up shows. I notice that when I'm preparing a big concert for the road, I will do a residency at a smaller venue to kind of workshop my banter. And the songs too. I'm workshopping all of it. But the banter is key, because that's where you find out, like, when I talk about my love life before this song that's actually social justice song, it doesn't make sense. I got to talk about my love life here before the big love song. Well, I know that seems obvious, but until you're up on your feet and performing, you don't find out what works and what doesn't work. It's very intellectual to go write a script of what you're going to say. Usually doesn't work out to be what you're actually going to end up saying on stage. And it has to be natural. So it has to be something that you worked with, practiced, and, sort of make it happen. And, oh, wow, it's like he's thinking about this for the first time. And that's when an audience gets charmed, when you deliver them something like yourself, but a heightened version. And that usually means you got to put the work in to find what are the key points, the key elements that you want to be talking about. And that's a lot to do with brand identity and who you are as an artist, right? That tells them who we are.
Right. Oh, very well put. And yeah, you alluded to like a showcase set there. And, for anyone unfamiliar, what we mean is, as many professional musicians know, is more like the type of show where you're in front of an audience of industry delegates who may or may not be considering working with you. And yeah, that audience is a lot different from, say, a group of fans of music, consumers, that are just there to hear some music. I mention that to preface this point because, again, you wrote for us about developing a killer showcase set. Actually, part 1 just ran in the March-April issue. Part 2 is going to drop in May. So again, CanadianMusician.com. But yeah, you had talked about like developing your set list for a showcase set, although I thought a lot, it was one of my favorite vocal columns we've had in a while. But a lot of that information, I thought, could very easily be applied to performing for any audience. So yeah, I would love for you to walk us through, I suppose, how you go about choosing your set opener. By follow-up and flow, I mean more so kind of track 2 and from there. And then, yeah, the rest is pretty self-explanatory here, but I know you've got some great ideas that people will find valuable.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I loved writing those articles for Canadian Musician Magazine. It's fun. It's fun focusing, on this issue of like, how do we make a showcase set that like really expresses who we are. And it's an art. It's not like your average set that you're going to do to your local fans. It's a set that's designed to impress strangers who work in the music industry who hear showcase sets every night, which means you're going to put not only your best foot forward, but you have to be very crafty in how you do it. Mm-hmm. So obviously the opening tune is going to be something that catches their attention in a powerful way and expresses who you are as an artist. If you are part of a festival situation and they've heard a bunch of different showcases, all they might hear is that first song. But it's got to be enough. They've got to get most of what you're about in one song. So that's a very key moment. They may walk away after that first song, but you want them to walk away knowing who you are and what you're all about. So that definitely that first tune, you want to do a lot of thinking about which of your tunes are the most unique and the most you. Probably up tempo, but that's not a hard and fast rule. The follow-up, the next tune, like that's just as crucial in a weird kind of way. The second tune, if it's too close to the first tune in vibe, in tempo, in key, in emotional content, you know what? I'm bored and I'm walking away. I'm going to go talk to my buddy at the bar because I feel like I already have reduced you to a kind of a brand identity, and I've got you in a box, so I don't need to hear anymore. Right. So you have to be you have to be really careful with that second tune. That second tune wants to deepen the story, widen the horizon, tell more about who you are as a person, as a personality, as an artist. So you have to choose that second song really, really carefully. And I've got on our list of notes here a cover tune. And for those of you songwriters out there, I know you're thinking, well, I would never do a cover tune in the middle of my showcase set because I'm showcasing my songs. And I hear you. I've made the same mistake umpteen times. And I'm here to challenge you Imagine that you are in a crowded concert venue with a bunch of your peers who work in the industry, and you're listening to somebody who's singing new songs that you've never heard. You may or may not enjoy this artist. Your buddy has told you to hear this artist. You're listening. By song 3 or song 4, unless that artist is literally Bruce Springsteen or Stevie Wonder, there isn't an artist in the world who doesn't bore a showcase audience by 4 or 5 songs in. We might enjoy them, but there's a part of us that's like, when is this over? I got to get to the next event. It's not about us not being geniuses. You know, it's just about the reality of the showcase situation, especially in the festival setting. I would say you want a cover song strategically placed in your set that is something most people in the audience would know. So they have something familiar to hook themselves into. Oh, there's a song I know. Suddenly they're relaxed. Suddenly they're staying for one more song, especially if it's a song that you do your own way. I highly recommend, right? That's really key. Don't just do a quick, easy cover. Work hard to find a cover that fits the bill, that both expresses who you are as an artist, but also it's a version that you do that's really unique, really your own. That way they get to see your artistry at work. They hear your voice on a song that they already know. And I just got to tell you, from a million showcases where I've talked to people in the industry and I've said, hey, how did you like so-and-so showcase? And they'll almost all inevitably say, it was good. It was good. I wish they'd done some song. I wish they'd done a cover tune or two. And I'm always shocked when I hear it, because it just doesn't seem like something you'd want to do. But I'm telling you, it can save the day. Next on the list is the closer. And of course, what you close your set with will define their memory of you. It may be the song that they talk about. It should be the song that they sing all the way to the car. So you want to be picking very carefully. In fact, I would say, poll the people in your world for what song they say stays in their head and is the most impactful upon first listening, because you really do want people to get that closing tune and have it live in their hearts. Encore. Should we have one? Yes. Will we get to do it? Probably not. Chances of being good. If you've been called back for an encore, you're doing a victory lap, because that is a fantastic thing on a showcase. It almost never happens.
Right.
But if you do get that encore, that's when it's a rock concert starring you. You could do exactly what you want at that point. The slowest ballad, the longest song. Just make sure that it's really giving the people another aspect of you. The encore wants to shake it up, wants to deepen the story. You don't want to do a song that is sort of like a song they've already heard. You want your encore to be special. And that also takes years of developing material before we have the perfect encore for a showcase set. In fact, all of the songs in your showcase set will take years. I often tell people, work on your showcase set now, because by the time you're ready to give it, the industry will be ready to see it.
Oh, awesome. And yeah, to close us out here, I mean, we are casting a wide net throughout the whole presentation. I suppose fitting that we're ending casting a pretty wide net. And again, just to give you a little taste here, if you want to follow up on this, well, there's tons of resources out there, but singersplayground.com is one that we can certainly endorse. Creating memorable moments, and I guess more plainly, just winning people over from the stage. Talking dynamics here, both in terms of your set and your overall performance, the physicality, the emotion of it. I think dynamic weave through all of those different components is going to help you out. The rest are pretty self-explanatory. So would love just a little bit of a sampling of some tips you might have for people, getting ready to go up there, give their best, and help them knock it out of the park.
Fantastic. It's interesting. Creating memorable moments it's a great phrase, because it's true that when you think of artists that that you love, you can usually sum them up in like, oh, he sang that tune and he was leaning over the monitor with the way he does that thing that he does with the guitar, or she gave us that hit song and she was like, that was when she was like in that light at the top of the stage and posing in that way that that you remember from the video. And like, it is an artist's job to create memorable moments for an audience. How we do that, you can't fake that. You can't sort of pretend or, study other artists and then hope that you can rip them off for their moves. Making the most of your performance is about knowing what it is that you express to your audience. And by that, I mean, what is it that they take away? Are you the kind of person that seems like you're their best friend? Is that who you are to them? If that's the case, that'll change how you approach performing and what kind of moments you'll be making. You'll get more intimate. There'll be more self-revelation. If you're the kind of performer who reminds them of a hero or makes them feel like you could be their hero, then you're going to have to be heroic. It's kind of like that. If you're going to remind them of someone strong, then you're going to have to be someone strong. But most of us are not one thing. And by that, I mean, we're all various. We all have different aspects to ourselves. So it's difficult for an artist to sum themselves up and go, oh, I represent love to my audience, or I am, I'm the kind of performer that is all about anger. We're usually about love and anger and a million other things. So a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to find what our unique self is all about and what parts of that get communicated to an audience. The best thing to do is to poll your fans. What do you like about my shows? What is it that you really dig? And there's probably a couple of people that are close to you that can help you figure out like what it is that you represent to an audience. Like, oh, who's really digging on you? It's all the women over 40. And like, those are the women that are digging you. You got to be talking to them. Fantastic knowledge, right? Because it allows you to then figure out how to best express to them who you are. And knowing your demographic is a big part of how you create a memorable stage show. But more than anything, it's knowing where your songs land with your audience, like where in their hearts and where in their, where in their psyches do you land? That's the thing, right? What do you represent to them? Then you can go about creating a show that reflects their expectations and reflects what it is that you have to give them. And by that, sometimes we mean, like creating memorable moments physically. Oh, at this point, I'm going to be like standing on top of the drums with the drummer, or whatever it is that we think is a big, dramatic, fantastic move. It's not, right? But like the best things happen because you take a risk on stage, but they happen because you know yourself and you're willing to be yourself. That's the key to creating memorable moments, is really knowing who you are and knowing what you represent for them.
Oh, great advice. We've got some great questions in the queue as well. Thank you to everyone for the very active participation. And we can say it now. For more about Micah and coaching, music and services, singersplayground.com. And again, a quick reminder, he'll be one of the keynote guests at Canadian Music Week 2018, happening in Toronto in mid-May. Canadian Musician will be there as well. So if you're in the area or traveling, consider adding that to your schedule. 2 sessions, one on the voice and the other related to team building. So again, kind of splitting the difference as we are here. But let's jump into the questions from our guests here. And they are pretty varied, which is awesome.
Yay.
Yeah, so one here is there's a singer who's a classical vocalist, but is looking to get into jazz and has a question about the best source of arrangements. She's saying, you know, if she wants to be able to hire a full band or something, just to have the materials where she's got songs that she can sing, but also make sure that anyone that might join her is ready to go. Yeah, where do you recommend going to make sure that you've got good, accurate charts that you know, go beyond just singer and say, you know, piano accompaniment?
Right. Well, you know, usually, depending on where you are, there's usually somebody in your world that can make those charts for you. I would highly recommend working with a musical director type. Maybe it's a band leader type, either a pianist, maybe a guitarist, who can either do the charts themselves or who will know somebody who can actually create those charts. That's, you know, and it's a very, it's a lot of people that do that. So that shouldn't be too hard to come by. If you look online and look locally, you shouldn't have a problem with that. And I love the idea of working with one musician rather than a whole band, because it's that gets really crazy. It's better to start working with one, and that way you'll build your book, as it were.
Oh, right on. Yeah, another interesting one here, and you know, I suppose the answer to her question maybe no, but I'm sure you've got some input for her. I find my voice is changing. I turned 60 this year, and my voice now has a rasp that wasn't there before. Anything I can do to keep my voice from changing?
Well, there's a couple of things. I've pretty well, you know, flogged the dead horse on the water and the rest, haven't I?
Yeah, I don't know with those are pillars.
They will make all the difference. If you do more vocal care, more warm up, and really, really, really know the technical appropriate ways of singing for your voice at your age. So it might mean working with a coach to get the most out of your voice at that, now that it's a mature voice, as we say. That's really the key, is knowing the instrument you have now, not hoping that it's going to do something that it did 20 years ago. And that means, I would say, dig in with a coach, and more than anything, keep your vocal warm-ups really serious, because a good warm-up will set you up. You'll end up potentially saving your voice, or at least being able to sing many, many years longer than you would if you don't have good technical support.
Spot on. And here, I guess we can close it out with this one.
Sure.
And again, thank you, everybody, for all this. Question is, and very, very timely, and maybe another opportunity to throw out water and rest. But Micah, I'm recording tomorrow and feeling a bit tight and hoarse. What do you recommend I try?
You know, if we're tight and hoarse, the worst thing to do is to oversing. So I wouldn't do a lot of singing today, knowing you're recording tomorrow. I would start drinking water yesterday. So, you know, start right now and get 3 liters in you before you go to sleep. Have an amazing sleep, deep, 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 deep. And start doing a warm up now that is gentle. Get away from the songs you're going to record, because it'll make you worried. Start warming up your voice very gently with the blowing and the humming that I was suggesting to another person earlier. Use those to kind of just make sure that your voice is supple and responsive. You'll notice that as you relax your throat, mucus might start to move around. No problem. Let it move. That's not going to hurt us. You might freak you out a bit because you're going to sing in the studio tomorrow, but the mucus will disappear. Adrenaline usually gets rid of it. Also, in terms of if it's a sore throat because you're getting ill, it's hard to say, right? It might be because you've oversung, or you're technically not singing correctly. So it's hard for me to give you specific advice beyond warming your voice up nice and slow today, and keep working with it through the day. If by the end of the day you find that it hasn't improved and it feels tight and you feel hoarse, ask if they can move the session, because you don't want to spend time and money in the studio when you know that you're not getting the best results. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Very well put. A quick one here, our sister company, Music Books Plus. If you go to musicbooksplus.com/webinars, yeah, there's a coupon code. You can save 10% on anything. We've also flagged a few titles, some good sellers that, yeah, all related to singing, to voice, that I guess touch on and or build on some of the things we've touched on in the session this afternoon. And you can also check out, there's some tips there to make the most of your next webinar experience. Again, thank you very much. Everyone will be getting an email, as it says here, with a link to the recording of this so that you can consume it at your leisure. Feel free, of course, to share it with other singers or people in your circles. And nwcwebinars.com is where you can go. You can access recordings of all of our previous sessions. That's also where you can go and check out the ones we've got coming up and get registered. So nwcwebinars.com. And yeah, huge thanks to Micah. Huge thanks to everyone for coming out. And I guess that's that. Thanks a ton, Micah. Anything else you want to let folks know about?
Andrew, it was such a pleasure talking to you. I love it. And I love what you're doing with Canadian Musician Magazine. It's a pleasure to like come on board as a columnist. I love it. And just encouraging anybody who wants to follow up. I love doing Skype and FaceTime sessions. I work with people all over the place. So if you ever want to have a yak, hit me up at singersplayground.com. We'll start a conversation.
There it is. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll be back next time. Take care until then.